Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. It's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. U.S. President Donald Trump said those words on Tuesday in the White House, signaling that a U.S. withdrawal from NATO remains on the table amid allied inaction in Iran. Poland, Germany, and other European states have emphasized regional priorities, ruling out their military participation in Iran. Now, with the Strait of Hormuz blocked and global oil prices under pressure, we ask the question, what is the durability of the U.S. European security alliance amidst this new crisis? We're now joined by Łukasz Fyderek, head of the Institute of the Middle East and Far East at Jagiellonian University. Good to have you here with us. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So I want to start with this first quote by Donald Trump in the White House. So if that is in any case true, or even how credible is that statement? How damaging is it, even if it is just normal Donald Trump?
Well, that's certainly a statement which crosses some sort of, I wouldn't say a red line, but at least the normal practice in strategic communication of U.S. presidents and Donald Trump in particular. That is important because it shows this sort of you would say a mood, right, of Donald Trump, but not only Donald Trump, but also his close circle of advisors, which is important taking into account how the decisions are recently been, how the process of decision making has recently looked like in Washington, D.C. It seems that those recent very serious decisions of U.S. Superpower were made in a very small circle of advisors with very limited inputs from the, let's say, other voices, be that in State Department, in Department of War, or intelligence community, or the Congress people. Hence, we have here a situation where Donald Trump is making a number of very serious, consequential decisions in a small group of advisors, and it seems that there is that tendency of group thinking in that group, meaning that they sort of share a number of premises and they follow them in their decision making. And the mood, it's as I said, is a negative, or the sentiment is sort of negative towards Europe in general, and the NATO in particular as of recently.
Mm-hmm. And then also, I mean, looking at trying to make sense of it all, I mean, we've also heard this statement by Senator Lindsey Graham, very close ally of President Trump, very much calling the allies arrogant. Trump called NATO a one-way street. He's saying that, you know, they should give something back, but then he says he doesn't need them, that America can do it all by itself. So which is it? I mean, how do we interpret this one way or the other way?
The recent proclamations or declarations by Donald Trump are quite contradictory, and there is a lot of analysis of those contradictions, which tells also a lot about, I would say, state of agitation of the U.S. president, or perhaps his inability to grasp those incoherences in those statements. Some would interpret that as a general strategy of being quite, let's say, enigmatic in his statements in order to somehow to treat, and they some interpreters, some commentators treat it or interpret that as a strategy rather than a sort of a we would say fault or of Donald Trump. So there is an open discussion about that, but what stays on the table is that the sentiment is negative, and that there is not many people who may influence the thinking of Donald Trump and his small circle of advisors. And the strategic, you would say, the quagmire or difficulties, to put it at least maybe this way, in Iran somehow proves that point, since the decision of striking on Iran was made apparently in a also very small circle, and as Donald Trump said a number of times, he was sort of surprised about the attacks, Iranian attacks on U.S. allies in the Gulf, and the difficulties which we now all face in the Strait of Hormuz and the global oil markets. Yeah. Since those scenarios were absolutely the baseline scenarios for all experts, including his own, let's say, former colleagues. It seems that the U.S. president is operating in a closed environment and not bringing too many inputs into that circle.
All right, but looking also about, I mean, Trump is someone who likes to very much be audible, be very present. He also counts on allies, not just the United States, but also abroad. Now, let's take a little bit more closer look. I mean, one of those allies has been also very publicly Polish President Karol Nawrocki. I mean, they've been aligned. Mr. Nawrocki has said many times that the United States is that essential guarantor for security for Poland. Poland has ruled out any sort of support militarily in this. How does this position the Polish president? Will he have to adjust his, let's say, strategy with the United States? How do you see this play out here in Poland?
Well, that is certainly basically a very tough situation for Poland, for many other, basically for all U.S. allies, but particularly those who are quite close to great powers. By that I mean Eastern flank countries, as well as countries such as South Korea or Japan. Those states, and Poland included, will try to follow the path of not alienating U.S. president. However, those countries are democracies as well, and Poland is one of them. Hence, the politicians such as Karol Nawrocki will need to follow that narrow path between alienating their own population and certainly contributing or declaring the Polish troops or allied troops, European troops or East Asian troops to this operation would be hugely unpopular in any of those states, Poland included. And on the other side of that equation is the personal relationship with the U.S. president, which is important in two respects. One of them is a strategic in respect to Polish security or other allies' security, and the other angle is that it is important for somehow proving to its domestic base of support that this certain politician, in this case Karol Nawrocki, is popular abroad and has powerful ally across the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm. All right, but at the same time, I think really quickly as well, I mean, Viktor Orban, Nigel Farage, Giorgia Meloni, all either leaders or allied with Trump, have all not really been on his side in this issue. But I want to ask you very specifically as well, which also is now in play, is the director of the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center, Mr. Joe Kent, who resigned on Tuesday. I'm just going to quote what he said, very much saying he cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran did not pose a direct threat to our country. So with that, I mean, Trump has already said right away he was weak on security, but what does this tell us, and where do we go from here when such a key figure in terms of security apparatus in the United States saying that he cannot work there anymore? Does this change the calculus in any way?
Well, that definitely is one of the reasons why foreign allies are not, let's say, enthusiastic to join the operation. If you made a decision and you are unable to put your own apparatus or your own bureaucrats or expert and an expert community on board, and clearly this is what happens in the U.S. right now. That the large part of the state establishment is unwilling to support Donald Trump's decision. Right? We've got this is the high-level resignation of Mr. Kent. But besides that, I think that there is a lot of talks in the diplomatic community or among the military staff that this war is not very well fought out, that there is no clear path to victory. Those fatal flaws are not flaws on the tactical, neither operational level. Those flaws are clearly false flaws or errors made on strategic and political level. Entering any conflict without clearly delineated aims and goals and strategy towards them is perceived as a major error in any, let's say, handbooks of strategy since ancient times. So that is the context, and this is obviously absolutely worrying for both Americans, Iranians, American allies, as well as professionals working for the U.S. government.
All right, just real quick at the end, just a short sentence, if I can just press you. I mean, with all this, I mean, with pushing from Trump, angry Trump, we had the Greenland issue, now we had the spending issue with the alliance, now we have this newest crisis. Where do you think this goes? An angry Trump at European allies in about a few months' time. Where does this leave us?
We're heading from crisis to crisis, as you've noted. So probably after a couple of weeks or months, we'll have another one. Hopefully, this one will calm down, and a lot of that depends on the situation on the ground in the Middle East and in Iran. Should we reach sort of a settlement, this pressure on allies should probably calm down.
All right, we'll see how that does develop. Look, as you said, crisis to crisis. Thanks for all that. That was our guest this morning, Łukasz Fyderek from Jagiellonian University. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.